Welcome, and thanks for joining us as we take a closer look at Miami Vice. You know the show with those two undercover detectives, Crockett and Tubbs, cruising through the neon-drenched streets of 1980s Miami.
Yeah, it wasn't just about the crime, though, was it? The music, the fashion, the whole vibe, it really captured an era.
Exactly. And it all started with this idea of MTV cops. Apparently the head of NBC at the time, Brendan Tartikoff, wanted a show that would appeal to that MTV generation, all visuals and music.
Hmm, that's a fascinating origin story. So did the creator Anthony Yerkovich just run with that concept?
He did. And he wanted to create something stylish and edgy. That reflected the realities of the drug trade at the time, which was exploding in Miami in the 80s. They actually even ditched the original title Gold Coast. Can you imagine?
Gold Coast. It does sound a bit too laid back for a show about undercover cops battling drug lords.
Speaking of which, what can you tell us about our main man, Crockett and Tubbs?
Well, Crockett is our brooding, mysterious type, living on a sailboat with an alligator named Elvis. Okay, that's not something you see every day. Talk about making a statement. What about Tubbs? He's the one who comes down from New York, right?
Yes. Seeking revenge for his brother's death.
Hmm.
And they're both working undercover, taking down drug kingpins, and facing those moral dilemmas that inevitably come with living in that world. How far are you willing to go to catch the bad guys? Can you even justify it to yourself at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's got to weigh on you. What struck me was the show's exploration of that partnership. They start out so different, but as they face those challenges, they build this incredibly strong bond.
It's that dynamic that keeps you hooked. You see them battling this feeling of futility, like they're constantly fighting a losing battle, but they keep going, keep trying to make a difference. It makes you wonder if their partnership is the only thing keeping them afloat.
Speaking of things that keep you hooked, let's talk about that iconic music. Jan Hammer's theme song. Instantly recognizable. Pure 80s Miami.
The music was truly groundbreaking. It wasn't just background noise. It was practically a character itself woven into the storytelling.
Right. And they didn't just use instrumental pieces, they integrated popular music from artists like Phil Collins, Glenn Frey, Tina Turner. It's like they created this immersive world where the music was as important as the visuals.
Those montage sequences were practically music videos. And speaking of stars, can we talk about the guest stars on this show?
Oh, yes. The guest star list reads like a who's who of 80s Hollywood. Bruce Willis, Julia Roberts, Phil Collins, even Miles Davis. That's some serious star power.
It really speaks to the show's cultural impact. Miami Vice wasn't just a TV show. It was a full-blown phenomenon. But of course, we can't forget the fashion.
Oh, the fashion. It was a total departure from the norm. This was the 80s. And men's fashion was pretty conservative. And then comes Miami Vice with those pastel colors, those loose-fitting jackets over T-shirts, those loafers with no socks. It was a revolution.
Crockett and Tubbs were basically walking billboards for Armani and Versace, weren't they? I mean, Gianni Versace himself was a huge influence on the show's style. They brought a whole new sensibility to menswear. And it wasn't just the clothes, it was the whole look. That effortless cool.
It's funny to think about it now, but back then, seeing a man in pastel pink was revolutionary. Miami Vice made it okay for men to be stylish to care about their appearance. You could argue that it broke down those old barriers.
You can definitely see its influence today. So we've talked about the characters, the fashion, the music, but there's still this whole other layer to the show, the historical context. How did Miami Vice reflect the social issues of its time?
Well, the show is set against the backdrop of the rising cocaine trade in South Florida. Miami was glamorous and exciting, but also had this dark underbelly of violence and corruption.
Wasn't all sunshine and yachts then?
Definitely not. The show's creators wanted to show both sides of the city. You'd have these gorgeous scenes of Miami's beaches and Art Deco architecture, but then cut to a brutal drug bust or a tense standoff with a criminal. That duality was really at the heart of the show's appeal.
It sounds like they were trying to capture the essence of Miami at that time, the glamour and the grit.
Exactly, and that's what made it so compelling. It wasn't just a cop show, it was a social commentary on a specific time and place in American history. And it wasn't afraid to show the ugly side of paradise.
And it had a major impact, right? It wasn't just popular, it actually changed the way TV shows were made.
It was a game changer. The way they used music, the cinematic visuals, the focus on fashion, all of that raised the bar for television production. They were pushing boundaries and taking risks.
And it paved the way for other shows that followed. Those elements feel so familiar now.
Yeah.
But Miami Vice was really doing it first.
Absolutely. You can see the influence of Miami Vice in shows like Law & Order, CSI, even The Shield. It's remarkable how a show that only ran for 5 seasons could have such a lasting impact.
That's the power of truly innovative and captivating storytelling. It stays with you long after the credits roll. But we've only scratched the surface, haven't we? There's so much more to explore in the world of Miami Vice.
We've only just begun, and there's so much more to uncover. So ready to dive back into those neon lights and pastel suits?
Always. We've talked about the style and the impact, but I'm fascinated by how much the music defined Miami Vice.
Well, if we're talking music, we got to start with Jan Hammer's theme song. It's practically a sonic time machine back to 1985. That synth melody, those driving drums, you can almost feel the heat radiating off the pavement.
It's incredible how perfectly it captures that Miami vibe. I mean, it even hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not many instrumental tracks can claim that kind of crossover success.
Yeah, that's wild. It really shows you how much the music resonated with people. And it wasn't just the theme song. They used popular music in such a unique way, creating these montage sequences that were like mini music videos within each episode.
Those montages were pure Miami Vice magic. Remember that scene in Brothers Keeper where Crockett is driving at night and Phil Collins is In the Air Tonight is playing? Talk about setting a mood.
Oh, absolutely. That scene is iconic Miami Vice. And it's interesting you bring up Phil Collins, because he wasn't just providing the soundtrack. He actually guest starred in an episode.
Wait, seriously? I had no idea. Okay, we have to talk more about those guest stars. It's like a who's who of 80s icons. Bruce Willis, Julia Roberts, Gene Simmons.
Don't forget Miles Davis. They had everyone from actors to legendary musicians like Glenn Frey from the Eagles, James Brown, even Little Richard.
Wow, it's amazing the show attracted that kind of talent. It makes sense, though. Music was such a huge part of the show's identity. Yeah. It's like they created this immersive world that you were just sucked into, both visually and sonically.
And those guest appearances weren't just quick cameos. They often played significant roles in the storylines. Talk about adding another layer of depth and excitement.
With all this talk of music and guest stars, we can't forget the heart of the show, those unforgettable characters and storylines. Are there any episodes that stand out as particularly memorable?
Oh, absolutely. Smuggler's Blues with Glenn Frey guest starring is a classic. And then there's Forgive Us Our Debts, which really digs into themes of guilt and redemption.
Oh, and what about the two-parter Down for the Count? That one was a real gut punch.
It's so well written and full of tension. It shows the darker side of Miami Vice, the emotional toll undercover work takes on these characters. So much more than just a flashy cop show.
Speaking of iconic moments, if you had to choose just one that defines Miami Vice, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, Crockett's Ferrari exploding in Smuggler's Blues was pretty unforgettable. A real turning point in the series.
Oh, talk about a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
But for sheer iconic status, I think it has to be the In the Air Tonight scene. The way they build that tension, the slow reveal of the gun, and then that drum fill. It's masterful.
You're right. That scene is pure cinematic brilliance. It's become ingrained in pop culture, so we've covered the music, the guest stars, the memorable moments. What else contributed to the legacy of Miami Vice?
We've talked about its influence, but it's worth repeating how groundbreaking Miami Vice was for television production. Those cinematic visuals, the way they used music, the focus on fashion, it set a new standard for storytelling on TV.
You're right. Miami Vice was more than just a show. It was an experience. You were transported into this world. And it all started with that vision of MTV Cops, creating something that would grab a generation obsessed with music and visuals.
And they definitely succeeded. Miami Vice's impact on television is still felt today. From the way shows are filmed to the music they use, it's remarkable.
It's amazing to think that a show that ran for just 5 seasons could have such a lasting effect. 5 seasons of pure style drama and that undeniable 80s cool. Miami Vice was truly one of a kind.
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit nostalgic after revisiting all things Miami Vice. It really was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. From the characters and the style to that groundbreaking music, Miami Vice was a perfect storm of creativity and capturing the spirit of the 80s. But it makes me wonder, did all that style and flash have any real-world influence?
You mean like, did Miami Vice change anything beyond fashion and TV?
Exactly. Did it have any impact on actual law enforcement, for example? Did it change the way people viewed undercover police work?
That's an interesting thought. It definitely glamorized undercover work, but I'm not sure how many real detectives were rocking pastel suits and driving Ferraris.
Probably not, but the show did shine a light on the drug trade, particularly the rise of cocaine in the 80s. It depicted that world, the dangers, the moral complexities, even if it was through this very stylized lens.
It's like they were trying to show the human cost of the drug war on both sides. The criminals and the cops trying to stop them.
Right. You saw Crockett and Tubbs wrestling with those tough choices, dealing with loss. And even betrayal. It wasn't just about catching the bad guys, it was about the emotional toll it took on everyone involved.
Okay, last question. If someone had never seen Miami Vice, what would you say to convince them to give it a try?
I tell them to buckle up for a visual and auditory feast. It's a show that's as much about style as it is about substance. You'll get caught up in the music, the fashion, those fast cars, but you'll also get drawn into these compelling characters and the challenges they face.
It's a time capsule of the 80s, but with themes that are still relevant today. Good versus evil loyalty, the price of justice.
And let's be honest, where else you're going to see Don Johnson rocking a white linen suit and espadrilles with such effortless cool?
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for our look at Miami Vice. We hope you enjoyed revisiting this iconic show with us.
Be sure to check out some of the episodes and moments we mentioned if you haven't already. Let us know what you think.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to post a comment or topic suggestion below. Join us again next time for a closer look at another great topic.